I just want to ask real quick, how many of you are here at this conference for the first time? Whoa! Whoa! Okay, how many are in sort of the 2 to 5 year range? Doesn't have to be sequential. Oh, that's good. Okay. Yeah. And for those of us who are brave enough to admit it, how many are 10 or more? All right. Prize for longevity. I'm asking because my funny story about this is that when I was preparing for this last week, I suddenly, out of the blue, remembered I have spoken to this conference before. Ooh, there's a possibility. So uncharacteristically, given my extraordinarily low technology skills, I was amazed that I actually was able to find an electronic file of my speech from 11 years ago, 2002. So I'm happy to tell you that even though I thought about it for 10 seconds, I am not using that speech again today. But if anybody wants a copy, I can provide it. And I would say I read it, and in that speech, I kind of worried a little, and I call it my angry ant speech. That's an Australian term. Little angry ants that get up and go, my message in 2002 was I was a little worried we were stuck on a plateau. We were kind of getting happy with the early adopters, and we're sort of getting into a bit of a status quo thing. And wow, everybody's made huge progress. And of course, I was away in the Antipodes from 2007 to 11. And I stayed in touch. I came back 2 or 3 times every year. That racked up the miles. But everybody's made so much progress, and I think you have a lot to be proud of in your work, whether you are a newer person in the field or someone who has been toiling in this field for a long time. While I was overseas working and learning and hearing about international perspectives from many countries, one of the things I missed most was this conference. The good friends and colleagues, certainly, who gather here that I really am attached to, but also this conference, among many I go to in the United States, has a level of passion about this work that I don't often see. And that's nicely connected and balanced with our commitment to analysis and practice. So this is a great space for learning, sharing, improving, supporting, and celebrating service learning, civic engagement, and other forms of community engagement. And I know you're going to have a great experience while you're here. I'm delighted to be part of it again, and I thank you for this opportunity to share some of the news of what I've been observing in my work as a higher ed researcher, interacting with a variety of campus systems and other networks around the country. And I do want to share with you some trends in higher education and what that may mean for us and our work as leaders of community engagement. Higher education is a field of research, and there aren't a lot of people in it. The Association for Study of Higher Ed is a relatively small but earnest and very productive and exciting disciplinary society. But it's interesting, if you don't happen to be at an institution that has a higher ed research department or some faculty in that role, like Chris Kress at Portland State, it's hard for the institution to get a sense of what's going on out in the big world. And if you don't go to conferences where people talk about higher ed trends, it's very easy to sort of feel like, wow, our institution is especially dysfunctional. And why do we have so much trouble with this? Because everybody else is probably doing great stuff. But I want to share with you today some trends that are very broad and impactful across all types of institutions, and give you some ideas about how that is affecting the opportunities for us in our work. Colleges and universities everywhere in the world are doing bolder, cooler, neater things that employ service learning and engagement concepts to build new internal capacity and cultural change for their institution, in addition to the effect it has on communities. There are lots of stories I could tell. In preparing for this, I started making a list of some of the really fabulous programs I've run into around the country for students and faculty and community. I'll just say a few general highlights, and then we can do examples later if you want. Here in the United States, community colleges and smaller institutions seem to be leading the way in creating policies that are providing formal service leave for all employees to volunteer in the community, or to join students in days of service or service learning projects if they want to do so. Isn't that cool? I'm hoping that that's going to be a trend. A number of research universities are focusing on preparing future faculty who are experienced in teaching service learning and in community-based research and partnership techniques by actually integrating that into graduate development. Also very strategic. Undergraduate research and service learning are being combined together now at a number of colleges and universities to engage more students in supporting the research questions of community partners, which is having a great effect on the community, but also other kinds of organizations, local governments, and business. And this is turning out to be a great strategy for promoting students to think about graduate study and faculty careers. International service learning, especially at private institutions that have been successful in getting significant donor and alumni funding, continues to become both more rigorous in its learning goals and more focused and sustained in its work with communities that value the partnership and the international connection, but really resent being subjected to different random serial projects. Designing larger long-term international projects that students can hand off to each other in international service learning is making the work more effective and beneficial for everybody and should lead to some real change in communities that have those sustained relationships. I'm happy to say I also know a number of colleges and universities that have successfully, I can't even say it, opened the conversation about the recognition of community engagement and promotion and tenure. And new examples of P&T policies and approaches and cultural change are popping up everywhere. It's really good news. And I have a theory about why it's happening, and you will hear that later. The largest challenge and frustration before most institutions today, including many in this room, is the need to design effective strategies for monitoring the scope and scale of engagement at their institution and to measure impacts and outcomes. It's on everybody's mind right now. And I'm happy to say I know several institutions that have developed some terrific systems or the early process or stages of systems and are currently trialing them. I was just at University of Minnesota earlier this week. They've created some metrics, as has the University of North Carolina's system, to gather similar data from all their campuses, and that in the aggregate will allow them to tell a story of the system's impact on the state. And I know others must be doing similar things. I suspect from what I'm observing and what I'm involved in, that within the next year, we may see one or more new data collection systems become available through the marketplace for general distribution. Not only would that be a great asset to institutions who have longed to be able to document their engagement story more completely and accurately, but it also holds the promise of creating a national database for engagement that could be the basis for the large-scale research we've wanted for a long time. These are just some quick observations of really large-scale, exciting, innovative activity going on right now. So the fields of service learning and community engagement, civic education are all doing well and are more robust than ever, at some institutions more than others. The work is deepening in some places and staying thin at others. Some of my colleagues are rather gloomy about the state of engagement, but I'm very optimistic. There's no substitute for really seeing it where the rubber meets the road and really experiencing what institutions are doing, and I shamelessly spend too much time in airports. We are making advances on some of the most persistent obstacles that have blocked growth and the development of deeper impact. Certainly the Carnegie classification is helping a lot of institutions develop a more intentional view of engagement and to build executive support for it. Overall trends in higher education, in my view, are making engagement a more obvious strategic tool that almost every institution is going to have in its toolbox. Every institution is going to have to decide intentionally and strategically how much of this is for us. So that's really the focus I want to state today, is the story of emerging trends in higher education offer new scope for engagement in all its forms. This story will lead up to a specific idea, a future direction for our work that I encourage you to reflect on when you go home and while you're at this conference. That idea is that community engagement is becoming such an important and effective process with a wider impact beyond what we imagined, that is now being seen by many higher educations not only as a valuable activity in its own right, but as a tool to promote overall strategic change in academic culture and improvement in academic performance. Does that surprise anybody? Oops, I used the word change in higher ed in the same sentence. Bad girl, bad girl. Actually, I hope to convince you today that the pace of change in higher education is growing, and actually the capacity to change is becoming the new institutional asset. This is by and large very good for community engagement. I know this will shock and surprise many of you, so hold on to your seats and don't throw anything at me, but I want to tell you that one of higher education's critical flaws is we cling to traditions too long. I know you didn't know that. We are too cautious and too slow to adopt new practices or values. For example, in this time of diminished resources, it is tempting to fall back on familiar strategies for getting through tough times, freezing hiring and travel, cutting across the board, pulling in our belt. I call this phenomenon old thinking. As funding from various sources has been reduced or withdrawn over the last 20 years, and especially the last 5 very graphically, all colleges and universities have changed in important ways. They've improved approaches to teaching, attention to assessment, the introduction of the scholarship of teaching and the scholarship of engagement. But by and large, academic culture has remained the same regarding what is valued and what is rewarded. Today, I hope to inspire you to new strategies for institutionalization that will help you propel each of your institutions into the future at a faster rate than you might have imagined. Progress toward external goals that may relate to better students, better outcomes, a stronger reputation or image, new streams of revenue, higher rankings, whatever it is that your institution has in mind, but also for the inner heartfelt vision you and your institution have for having an authentic impact on your town, your city, your state, the nation, and the globe. My key premise today is that in the next 7 to 10 years, and I'm leaning towards 7 more than 10, we will see enormous changes in higher education culture, capacity, and performance comparable to the scale of the GI Bill in the 40s, the creation of the community colleges in the 50s and 60s that led to mass access to education, and the diversification of access to higher education in the 70s forward. In particular, there are early signs that we will see important changes in the concept of prestige and reputation and develop a preference for collaboration over competition. That ought to make you want another cup. This trend has opened new and higher levels of attention to community engagement as a strategic tool for building institutional skills and values that certainly strengthen communities, but also transform academic culture and traditions. Simply said, the colleges and universities that will emerge as highly respected exemplars of academic achievement and performance, the institutions we all like to imitate and point to, at the end of the next 7 to 10 years, these will be institutions that have learned well and truly not to do things the way they've been done for the last 30 years. It is becoming an extreme liability to give in to the faculty to do things the way we always have. The next decade is so important and will be so change-making because it offers a rare moment in history, a unique convergence of conditions and opportunities that offers every college or university of any type a chance to reinvent, redirect, transform, and improve itself if it wants to do so and if it's ready to give up old thinking. So, what creates this wild and exciting opportunity I'm foreshadowing? Number one, the money's gone. For public institutions, state funding's withdrawn, it's not coming back. Private institutions have experienced dramatic downsizing in their endowments, reduction in donor gifts, and almost all institutions have had to raise tuition and other costs to what I believe is the cap. I don't think we can keep doing that. I think we have gone as far as we can run the string to put the cost of education onto students. Federal research money, if you're at an institution that values that, is declining rapidly, and it's not going to come back until the economy comes back. And it is graphically eroding our global position as a research leader. The cost of higher education, for the first time in our last presidential election, was framed as a political football, and new policy intrusions posing threats to our values for liberal and general education loom as a possibility, including the possibility of degree standards. We could end up with no child left behind for higher ed. A scary thought. There's also the concern about, is the degree worth the price? I have to say our community college colleagues could teach us a lot about making sure we can demonstrate that. Among colleges and universities at the baccalaureate level and above, the image of the ivory tower is still alive and well, and even some of our community partners, working with relatively engaged institutions doing quality work, in their inner selves, our partners would still say we're generally disengaged from the communities around them as an institution. Large universities in particular may still be seen as the big dog that knows how to get what it wants. Students are mobile and savvy and increasingly willing to protest fairly about poor teaching and learning quality and the inefficiencies of the curriculum. They enroll in online courses, but often for the wrong reasons, wanting it to be faster and easier. I have friends who teach in online courses, and it's great one semester, and the next one you wonder where have they gone. Current online learning, with some exceptions, is not very interactive and not very engaging, but I am very optimistic that better models are soon to emerge on a large scale, and I know a lot of folks are exploring the concepts of e-service learning and other ways of engaging online learning students. So I'm pretty optimistic on that front. We could talk about that if you like. Internationally, the number of new higher education institutions is growing, and many are already poaching promising faculty and students from our country. The length of the time to obtain a Ph.D. in the United States is not holding up well in comparison to the ability to get a Ph.D. in other English-speaking countries, and that's a problem. Finally, in my view, and most important for change, and I'm going to spend some serious time on this, is we are well into the transition of the academic workforce from one generation to another. For the first time in 40 years, more than half of the academic workforce around the world is going to be replaced. This presents a challenge and an opportunity that will not come again for decades. It is likely we will soon see chronicle stories about faculty shortages. Hard to believe. In the face of these conditions, I see only opportunity, but that's me. But capitalizing on that opportunity will require all institutions to change their old thinking, our mindset and habits of management, leadership, budgeting, culture, rewards, curriculum design, the role of students, the nature of faculty work, and of our physical presence and intellectual and civic responsibilities in community spaces. We have to accept that not only have these external conditions changed, but our internal conditions are under pressure to change as well. The standards and expectations associated with performance, quality, and reputation across higher ed are changing, and keeping up with the Joneses now requires swift action and bold moves on institutions addicted to that old thinking. Operating with the same values and strategies as we did even in 2000 is no longer a path to success or to progress. Here's why. In the 20th century, most universities, most academic institutions, primarily universities that have a hybrid mission of teaching, learning, and research and service, were rewarded for and incentivized by a comprehensive array of disciplines, research funding from a small set of prestigious sources, a focus on individual achievement measured by grants, peer-reviewed publications, and patents, attracting the best students, being as selective as you knew how, the size of the endowments, I'm not going there, alumni achievements, and athletic success. It's crazy, but it counts. In this environment, excellence was primarily measured as the coincidental sum of the individual choices of faculty behavior. Their choices of how to teach, how to work with students, whether or not to adopt engagement, what they would research, how they did it, where they published it. Excellence was connected to the individual faculty choices of how they did their work. These factors are still in play because the systems and personalities invested in them ensure that they are perpetuated for now. But as I'm saying, change is in the wind, and some institutions are already on the move away from this. In the 21st century, we can already see, and we're well into it, we're well into the 21st century, that there are new and different forces that are increasingly influencing the following kinds of actions at institutions. Many of these apply to all institutional types. A focus on a specific set of broad multidisciplinary themes of urgent importance to academia and to our communities, working together on specific issues across disciplines to really have some impact. Extensive and collaborative knowledge partnerships, local, national, and international, that accelerate discovery and diffusion of knowledge to a variety of audiences. This requires sustainable, mutually beneficial partnerships and the ability to listen to communities. Education success among a diverse and inclusive student body, I call that effective learning. Innovative, interactive, technology-based, and experiential learning that is efficient and relevant. We're seeing a trend around, as I said earlier, the promotion and tenure policies that are not one size fits all, but support and reward diverse scholarly approaches, methods, and outputs. Every faculty member works to their own strengths. The Boyer view of scholarship is coming true. It's just happening naturally. There's very little direct conversation about it. The fact is, the way knowledge works now is bringing the Boyer model into reality. The University of South Carolina is a quick example. In its accreditation study for its regional accrediting body, SACS, has recently, I heard the story, they've refused to comply in the design of their self-study with the provided template that required a separate discussion of teaching capacity and performance and research capacity and performance. They said, we cannot separate these. That's a harbinger of where we're going. And finally, a 21st century measure of quality and effectiveness focuses on cooperation and collaboration with other academic institutions and sectors to magnify our knowledge impact on society and to maximize the use of our now very scarce human and financial resources. In this 21st century environment, excellence is moving toward being measured as the sum of collective institutional activity and institutional impact on economic, human, social, and cultural well-being. It's going to be a different ballgame. These strategies present many benefits to the institutions that are embracing them because they increase capacity without increasing or needing vast new resources. It's changing the way we work, using our resources better instead of waiting. But what's interesting is institutions going down this road also see that it is leading to new streams of revenue. These strategies, therefore, I think, are the cornerstone of the new business model, the new economic model that higher ed has to invent for itself, connecting the university to a variety of resources, financial and otherwise, that will allow us to improve our impact and make our work of a higher quality for ourselves and for those who benefit from it. These ideas, these strategies I've talked about, these new values, increase our capacity for engagement. You can see the role of engagement in it. And it calls for us to embrace our students as colleagues, co-producers of knowledge, and our communities as knowledge partners. These ideas position us more clearly as respectful neighbors who are good citizens of community. They accelerate institutional performance by building critical interdisciplinary capacity, activating the more disengaged disciplines, linking learning and research more closely, creating diverse partnerships and sustainable collaborations, and aligning capacity and operations with the expectations of the new funders. Note well that these new values and strategies that are linked to institutional success all involve, in one way or another, a core commitment to community engagement. And as an institutional priority, a strategy for change and a form of scholarly work. These strategies are also key to being successful in the growing competition for next generation faculty. Research on Gen X faculty entering the workforce reveals a strong commitment to integrated scholarship, to interdisciplinary work, to collaboration, to transparency and performance review, to working in their lifetime in different communities and different countries. And it's certainly grounded, they are totally grounded in community engagement, scholarship that makes a difference, and discovery that has an impact on quality of life. Some of you may already have been seeing or feeling or observing some of the tension in your institution between faculty and staff generations. The role of institutional leaders such as chairs, deans, and directors has never been more important to manage this transition. The change is happening faster at some institutions than others, creating differences in institutional capacity for creating these new changes in institutional strategies. Some institutions are moving with a sense of urgencies, and other institutions are becoming a very interesting snapshot of about 1990. Depends on how bold people are being. Research has revealed significant findings about the different traits, expectations of Gen X and now some Gen Y faculty entering the workforce every day. The research finds they are more racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse than the existing workforce by far. Many have had service learning during their post-secondary studies, undergraduate or graduate, and may have taken service learning in high school. As Gen Y numbers grow, we will have faculty who had service learning in grade school. We can be certain that a high percentage of them have had direct experience of engagement in their life. These generations totally get a Boyeresque view of scholarship. They know everything works together. They want to work across disciplines. They want transparency. They want no secrecy in promotion and tenure. They want to live in different places and ensure their families experience different cultures and communities and even perhaps work overseas. They value mobility more than tenure. There's data for this. Mobility more than tenure. So what that means is they're going to make decisions about where they want to be. A very important thing to note is that Gen X faculty are already beginning to enter leadership positions in their disciplines, and this trend will accelerate. They will have their way. These ideas and values they hold will not be suppressed. They will change policies and culture. They will be in charge, and it's already starting. Many of these newer faculty approach me after campus workshops and gatherings and express deep frustration at waiting for their turn at the pump to get their way. And sadly, many describe their current environment using terms like intimidation, abuse, and punishment by senior faculty seeking to imprint their values on yet another generation, and I can only say they're not going to succeed. Gen X and Gen Y will be in charge. Because of the performance advantages conferred by these new people and strategies, some colleges and universities are already using strategic budget cuts to fund the hiring of large numbers of new Gen X and Gen Y faculty. Oregon State University is on the path to, within the last 2 years and next year, we'll have hired almost 250 new faculty. And we've been taking them on Rhodes Scholar tours, as many states do, to visit community engagement sites as one of their orientation activities. Hiring in the United States seems slow right now, but statistical reports shared in the Chronicle reveal that the number of openings for tenure-track positions across all disciplines has been rising significantly every year since 2003, especially in disciplines that are usually hard to find space in. Most importantly, as the generational transition speeds up, these new faculty will have choices, and the character of a university's academic culture, including the valuation placed on and support for unique forms of scholarship such as community engagement and service learning, will influence their decision about which institutions they choose to seek employment and their longevity in that position. For the many reasons I've outlined, and there are more than we have time for, it is strategically important and even urgent for every academic institution to be intentional and ambitious in understanding the power of community as a key strategy to build capacity for the internal and external change that will propel them toward a 21st century academic model. Community engagement and service learning are moving from the margin to the core, and they are no longer seen as an option or should be an encapsulated program. They have to become part of integrated institutional strategies. I want to share with you some new thinking strategies, some modest, some large scale, that your institutional leaders should pay attention to going forward. Some may be more relevant to some of you than others, and depends largely on your institution's current state of engagement. Most of these require the understanding that community engagement is what it is to us in terms of working with community and engaging with community to the betterment of student and community outcomes, but they also require an understanding that community engagement has a larger strategic value in changing the institution. Develop, if you don't already have, a set of broad, collaborative, and inclusive interdisciplinary themes for engagement to include multidimensional and a comprehensive agenda of work involving potentially multiple academic institutions and community partners to achieve focused, real, measurable change in communities. This trend should bring an end to the persistent, unintended tendency of some engagement programs to fall into visiting, studying, and observing community problems and learning about them rather than actually shutting those problems down and changing the community to a better condition. It also opens the door to greater institutional collaboration, in particular communities where the community would be happier if we worked together. We need to encourage, in this way, interdisciplinary work. Engagement provides opportunities for greater performance and involvement in community-based scholarship in all disciplines and all institutions. Bridge the generations by promoting mentorship and respect, recognizing the different values, creating capacity to ensure fair review and assessment. Many of the newer faculty are protesting the imposition of the three-bucket form of promoting their work. They see it as a straitjacket. This is a problem that's easy to fix. It's time to recognize the role of our staff beyond the faculty, who are often intensely involved in engagement and are responsible for sustaining many of our partnership relationships. I'm very, very supportive of the idea of service leave for our staff. It's time to integrate engagement as an organizational value into the hiring and selection for every position in the institution and in the recruitment messages we give undergraduate and graduate students. It's also time to link community-based learning and undergraduate research together so that we increase the capacity to meet knowledge needs in communities and to integrate components of evaluation and research that ensure greater benefits for community. There's some wonderful examples of this, like the UCLA Summer Social Innovation Research Internship. There's a lot of wonderful models of this. Expand community voice in the review and assessment of engaged faculty and in student learning. I did a lot of workshops around promotion and tenure with every school and college, the deans, and all of the promotion and tenure committees at University of North Carolina, Greensboro in 1 week. We sort of kicked the whole institution in the seat of the pants in 1 week about promotion and tenure culture. And it was exciting and comforting to hear at the end of that week the buzz sort of being an understanding that one of the changes is to assess my colleagues' community engagement work. I actually have to hear impact review, comment, and input from community. That's actually a huge breakthrough. It's time for us to develop distributed leadership and accountability for engagement across the institution to complement the success many places have had to create a leadership position. Having one person or a few people in one center is not enough. For the whole institution to be engaged, this needs to be part of job accountability and responsibility at every level. and in every aspect of the institution, including our favorites that tend to stay outside the bubble: business and property management, purchasing and employment. And finally, I will suggest the importance of integrating engagement as a core message and a goal for alumni work, development, and media relations strategies, and of course, student marketing. For the benefit and the enrichment of your current faculty and staff, and for those who will want to join you in the future, for your students who crave experience and the opportunity to improve the world they are inheriting, for your partners who seek lasting and concrete change in their communities, for your metropolitan, our town, region, your state, your nation, I encourage you to work with your leaders and your colleagues to adopt new thinking by moving community engagement more closely to the core of your institutional strategy and not something in and of itself. I hope you will be able to seek out opportunities to share some of these ideas with administrative leaders as an effective strategy for broader institutional success than they may imagine. Higher education is a culture of imitation. We're all magpies. We're going to mimic everybody else. So take advantage of that tendency and search out stories and examples of what peers or aspirational peers for your institution are doing to implement community engagement as a force for changing the culture. Seek to create new cross-institutional partnerships, especially where involved in similar issues with similar partners in the same neighborhoods. Cincinnati is a great example of a city that's been incredibly successful in bringing together all of its academic institutions and many nonprofit organizations to coordinate work in the area of early child school readiness, reducing duplication and increasing collective action on ways that are really improving kid outcomes. It is the collaborative nature of community engagement. This is a real central message here. It is collaboration that we learn through community engagement that will help every college and university in this time of extreme change weather the differences and learn the new skills. Committing to an agenda of quality community engagement fully integrated into our institutional strategies and culture will help create stronger, more equitable, and healthier academic institutions and similar communities. Community engagement with its core values of that mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge in a context of partnership and reciprocity is a collaborative method of doing our work. It is a challenging experience by which all participants learn greater skills of collaboration, and that is what I think produces the strategic broader effect on institutions that I am describing. Collaboration is an aspect of organizational capacity and skill that will be essential for success in the 21st century for every college and university. Remember, it is the collective impact of our engagement efforts, programs, and partnerships that will produce positive and measurable and permanent change in our institutions, our students, our colleagues, and most importantly, it will start to create real progress on bigger scale in communities than we've been able to do alone and in the compartmentalized approaches we've been using. And that's what we really always meant for community engagement to do. That was our original goal. I want to thank you all, faculty, staff, community partners, and students present, for your work in education and communities every day. You are the ones who make the difference and create the change that is the basis for a better future. I hope some of these messages will empower you to go home, shake up your leaders. If it shamelessly has to be about knowing that the broadening and deepening and integrating this work improves reputation and fundraising, so be it. Do whatever it takes to get this from the margin to the core. It is a strategic advantage. It is not an option. Thank you.